everyone, and guess what? I'm back in the car. I had not been able to escape the car the entire week. It's been nothing but the car. I want to be home. I remember the days when it was nothing but home, and now I'm like, I long for the days of being in my house. No, I lied. It was a good lie. I almost made it through. Almost. But my guest today has definitely seen better people tell better lines more convincingly, for sure. Anyway, this is the Ladies Tale Podcast. Welcome to the Ladies Tale Podcast. Oh my word, how did I forget to introduce the show? Yeah, it's a testament to my true narcissism. Yeah, when I introduce myself, I don't even introduce myself, but I start talking about myself before I talk about anything else. Oh, by the way, I'm Winona. Wow, that's sad. I'm going to do better next time, I swear. And I'm one of the End I Thought ladies. And guess what? We wrote books. Yeah, go figure. An author writing books. How weird. We wrote And I Thought Divorce Was Bad, and I Thought Being Grown-Ups Was Easy. If Only I Were Me, a Memoir in Verse, Widows Web, Widows Debt, and Foreign Coffee. Altogether, that is 7 books, y'all. So you know what time it is? It is sign language time. So if I wrote 7 books and then I added 6 more books, that equals 11 books. Oh, I lied. I can't math today either. So it's okay. 6 plus 11 equals 17. 17 books. I can sign language, but I can't math. So you can see those 17 books at www.andithoughladies.com. And since I do have a really cool guest today and I'm not looking my best and I'm in a car, I'm going to compensate because my narcissism says I have to. So here we go, y'all, like a car salesman. You can find out our 17 books at www.andithohladies.com. That felt so good. But you're not here to hear about me. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. And I got to stop like trying to pose in the camera. Like, not here to hear about me. You're here to hear about my wonderful guests. Wonderful guests, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. Oh my God. That was the best introduction ever. My name is Tessa Blake. I am delighted to be here. I was told to think about 3 things to say about myself, but I was so totally intrigued by what you were saying. I completely blanked. Here's on the spot. Caffeine is very important to me. I have a coffee tea regimen almost every day, and it keeps me straight. I am a director, a filmmaker, direct a lot of television, but I'm making a film this year, doing a feature film this year, which I'm very excited about. And I am a mom of a 17-year-old who amazes me every day.
I want to be like, let's talk about like the prestigious awards, but you just said I'm a mom of a 17-year-old that amazes me every day. All right, either you're an amazing mom or she's an amazing daughter, or I just haven't met an amazing pair before. How does this work? Because most people go, I'm a mom of some teenagers, and good God, they're teenagers, and then they move on.
I got really lucky. Well, okay, here's the thing. There's one, right? She's one child. I have a child. So that helps. She really is amazing. She's an incredible, thoughtful, lovely, creative, inventive person. She inspires me. She is, she designs, she does music, and she's smart as hell. And she's great. And my mom was is a quirky, interesting person. And I guess the thing that I took from my mother was that you're on the ride. My mom was on the ride that was me, and I'm on the ride that is my daughter. So my mom never tried to control me. And so then I don't even know what it would be like. Anyway, that little part of it I just got from my mom. So mostly between my mom and my daughter, I get to seem awesome. But the truth is they gave me the tools I needed to be able to I remember when she was first born, people would be like, you just love being a mom. And I was like, I love being her mom. I wasn't like, the whole idea of like a mom felt like a burden as a working person, that I didn't want to have this, like, the label of that felt oppressive. Beautiful for people for whom it's beautiful and their thing. But I've always been so identified with work and making work, and the idea that somehow I would be kind of collapsed into this definition of motherhood was very uncomfortable to me. So that's completely separate, and all those cultural expectations of what it means to be a mom, I find, for me, a little troubling, but being her mom, I found awesome.
Oh my goodness. Best explanation I have ever had of this. Like, you make me want to consider having kids, and I've never thought about it. Like, someone, I think I was 3.5, and I was sitting in my car seat, and I told my parents' friends, I'm never having children. And they were like, all right, let's write it down. And this is the date. And when you have your first kid, I'll bring it up. Let me just explain, which is sad, but the person who wrote it down has passed away, and I still don't have kids.
I get it.
But you, for the first time, I was like, children don't sound so bad.
Well, child. One.
Yeah. One child. Yes, right. One child doesn't sound so bad, but I know my luck. I ended up getting like the spawn of Hades. All right, let's get back to real things. I'm sorry. I was all like, I'm so stressed. This is a director. I have to do my best. And here I am talking about children or child.
I love it. It's part of what's real though, right? Like, particularly for working women, like, no matter what the job is, we may or may not have families. We have cultural pressures if we do have families. We have cultural pressures if we don't have families. Like, there's no version, I think, of talking to a working woman in any profession that doesn't have at least the context around it of family, because of culture, because the culture keeps defining you relative to the question of family, no matter what.
I try my best not to make any social statements on the show. But I'm blaming it on school because I'm back in college. So I'm going to blame it on school with, oh my God. You know how many times I'm like, this does not make sense. Why are you part of a set of rules you had nothing to do with putting together? So how did they explain you and what I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
I don't like it at all.
Yeah. Important. It's really, we could spend a lot of time on that. I think that's a really interesting question. It's a really interesting question around gender. It's a really interesting question around race, particularly in America. Like, we have set up a structure that's like, the whole world is a white guy thing. And so we're like chipping away at that, and we're starting to work at chipping away at that. But it's just the truth. All the schools were white guy schools. And then they started letting us in, whatever version of us it is, but it's still basically a white guy school, right? Like, my industry is basically a white guy industry. Like, all of the structures, all of the big, powerful structures where there's money were only populated until very recently by a certain kind of person. And if you're different than that certain kind of person, you're coming into a structure that is not directly in support of you, sort of like lets you be there, kind of makes a little bit of room for you to be there, but only on a certain condition and terms, right? So this is, fortunately, I believe, truly changing, and it's changed before, little by little. We keep sort of, but there's a lot to be said about that. And I hear you.
I like that you say it this way, because as a director, if I'm correct, when I talk to directors, they tell me that their job is to see a whole vision from the writer, from the script, and see an entire vision, and then communicate that vision to the financiers, to the producers, to the actors. So I feel like you looking at this situation and saying something is taking in the majority of the scope. Am I wrong? And I'm sorry, why the heck is this a philosophical interview? That is not what we do here. I apologize. Let's get back on track.
I think it might be my fault. I'm just going to go to philosophy every time it comes up.
Oh, okay. Okay. Y'all, it was way too serious for way too long.
We're moving on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's jump to something else and then we'll go back to professional. Let's just go ahead and jump to like, where do I find good food in LA? Because I visit in like, in 7 days, in exactly 7 days, I will be in Los Angeles. And I'm going to tell you what I have never found while I was in LA is food.
Oh, there's a lot of really good food here. There's a lot of really good food. There's this really great writer who passed away a couple of years ago, but he was a food writer in LA called Jonathan Gold. And if you just look him up and go to any of the places he tells you to go to, and his writing's beautiful, you'll be really happy. And it's always like really interesting Korean food, interesting Trinidad and Tobago food, interesting, like there's tons. The thing about LA that is not often LA is a very, wide city, like it spreads out and it's a lot of different cultures, but you don't see them unless you go and seek them out, but if you go seek them out with food, you have a really good time. There's great stuff to be had here. Great.
Oh, great. Because I'm not gonna lie, Los Angeles, it was the first time I've ever had a baked funnel cake.
It doesn't sound good.
It wasn't. They
No.
were like, it's baked. And I was like, yeah, I could taste it. And I was like, but the way they were like, you can taste the difference. And I was like, I can definitely taste the difference.
Yeah. No, go to like food trucks and holes in the wall. Here's the secret to LA too, is so many of the best restaurants are in strip malls. Like really some of the best are in strip malls. Yeah.
Okay, I'm doing that. Okay. Now we are going to professionalism. I swear it's a one-way ticket. We're on this train to professionalism. How did you become a director? See, it's a professional question.
It is a professional question. Okay. So at some point it went from like bossing around my friends to being called a director. Like I just am a natural director. I have a lot of opinions. I have so many opinions just all the time. And I directed like my first little spoof, like SNL spoof commercial when I was in 6th grade. And I made everyone get up really early and like run through the wildflower fields. And it was like a commercial about how the deodorant that would save your life, right? Like that was my very first like silly little 6th grade project. But I didn't take it seriously as a director. I got to college, I acted, I wrote, and then in my college, it wasn't like the theater program was really independent. It wasn't like we had a bunch of teachers involved. We sort of did our own thing. And you could apply to direct something. And I was like, here's what happened. I was in a play, and I was so grumpy about how it was directed. I was like, why am I him and why is he him? And my friend Andrew was like, maybe you should direct. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should, and then I like filled out the application, did the him, and I got selected to direct a play, and then I auditioned the play, and then I was starting to rehearse the play. And I remember I walked into my roommate and I was like, is this what a director looks like? Do I look like a director? She was like, you've never not looked like a director. Get out the door, right? So I directed theater a lot through college, and I directed dance, and I directed and then got into the real world. And I sort of had, this actually brings us back to our first philosophical conversation, but it's important. I thought in my generation, we were all like, we were educated at the same level as men. We were top of the class in the same way as men through the educational system. And I sort of thought the women's movement had done all the work it needed to do in some ways. And I just thought like, cool. So then we'll just come up and it'll be even the whole way because it's even now, right? And then I stumbled into the real world and kept thinking it was all my fault. Kept being like, wait, I'm not getting that. Oh, wait. And at some point I had a film that I made an independent film, this crazy documentary about my insane family. It premiered at South by Southwest. It was released theatrically. It was honored by the Academy. I had like a moment where agents cared about me. I was in my 20s, I came out to LA. I was living in New York, came out to LA, did not understand LA at all. Found it very confusing. And people would say things and I'd be like, what does that mean though? And so all the time, right? So I went to these agent meetings and they were like, so what do you want to do next? That's always the question. What do you want to do next when you've done something sort of interesting? And I was like, well, you don't get better at directing unless you're directing all the time. The only place you can direct a lot is in television. So I want to be directing television. And they, to a number, and there were women in these rooms too, they kind of went, yeah, you're not going to be able to do that. So let's talk about the independent film stuff. And I didn't know. I thought they like had X-ray vision to my abilities or qualities, and they were like seeing some flaw in me. They were seeing that somehow I wouldn't be able to achieve that. And I was too scared to ask, like, what do you, I mean, now I'd be like, what do you mean? You know, and then they would tell me it's really hard. And then I would be like, okay, so it's really hard, but let's make it happen. You know, but then I was like, oh, I'm bad. There's something about me that's wrong and flawed, and I'm not going to be able to do this. And it's embarrassing that I asked. And like, I sort of ran back to New York being like, I'm just going to do what I know how to do. So I did theater. I worked as a journalist, written for magazines. I worked as a playwright. I worked with a wonderful theater company in New York called Naked Angels. And that theater company a play I wrote ended up coming back to LA. Anyway, one thing led to another, and I got a writing career with my husband in Hollywood. And I'm skipping over a whole bunch of steps, but it was some years into that pretty good writing career where I was like, wait, why did those agents say that I would never do that thing? I mean, the guys I'm coming up with, like, you know, the theater director I came up with, he's directing Game of Thrones, and these other guys I knew from like film festivals are doing, you know, and I was like, what? Why did they say I couldn't do it? And then I was like, wait, all the guys I know. Wait, is it really that basic? Like, I know it seems like no duh now, but you know, rewind some time ago and I was like, oh my God, the women and people of color I knew who I came up with are not working at the level that the white men are. I mean, it was so straightforward. I was like, so it was just gender bias. They were just, they had an unconscious bias about gender. Like, I don't even know that they understood what they were saying. They just looked at me and they were like, oh, television directors you're not, you know, one of these things is not like the other, basically. And I was like, oh, if it's gender bias, I can fight that. So anyway, I started fighting it and then I won, I guess, somewhat. And here we are.
No, I understand that. Recently, our first talent manager, we don't have literary agents, we have talent managers, mentioned some bias that I would hit trying to be in Hollywood, because I didn't want to be in literary. I wanted to be in Hollywood. And she was like, you're going to run into this, this, and this. And I said, no, I won't. Yes, you will.
Yeah.
It's like you look back and I did the same thing that you did. I'm like, there's something wrong with me. I have to just go at it at a different angle. They must be, and then I was like, oh, she did tell me. Mm-hmm. Okay, it makes sense. Anyway.
It's real. It's real. It's real. And I think for me, when I was able to confront it as real, I was able to solve for it, right? I was like, I just decided not to have a lot of feelings about it. You know, I just like try to not have a lot of feelings about it and game it.
I mean, that's all you can do. If you can't finesse your way into a room, well, you're like, well, best thing I can do is get a bulldozer and coming in somehow. Yeah. Coming in somehow. I don't know how, but we're coming in. Okay. So you have directed multiple episodes of television. I should ask a different question before I start with this, going back on the you question. I do have a question I've been dying to know. What is the difference between the mindset of getting ready to direct a feature film and directing an episode of television? I believe someone told me an episode of television is easier than a feature film. I'm very confused about how that works and if it's true. Would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, it's a great question. They're very, 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 very different. They're very different in prep in particular, right? So I don't know that we could say one is harder or easier. It's a different job. So in a feature, I am making all the decisions. There's a longer prep. We got to figure out all the costumes. We got to cast the entire cast. We've got to do all the production design. I'm hiring the director of photography. We're building from the ground up a thing that we're going to go shoot, and then as a director, I'm also going to do all the post-production on it, right? So television works at a completely different pace. So at any given time on any television show you're watching, there are at least 3 directors working. There's one director prepping, there's one director shooting, and there's another director in post. And in fact, in practice, there are probably more directors, doing pickup shots, or 2 people are in post at the same time sometimes. So what that means is that the pilot is like a feature. The pilot is the place where the tone of the characters is determined, the look of the visual vocabulary of the show is determined to some extent, right? So those major decisions, a big chunk of the major decisions for the overall have already been made. None of the decisions for this episode have been made. So you make those decisions in collaboration with the head writer, the showrunner, right? Who is the producer. So the showrunner in features, the director tends to be the major creative professional, the biggest, most decisive, the decision maker. In television, the writer, the head writer, the showrunner is the final arbiter of things, working directly in concert with the director of that episode. So you're just serving slightly different things. The thing about TV prep is it's insanely fast. 7 days to prep an hour of television. Features have a lot longer prep, but it's because all those decisions have been made. There are a lot more politics. Well, they both have a lot of complex personnel things. In television, you're stepping in as a guest on a previously existing, in a family that has gelled or has problems, and whatever the circumstances, you're stepping into it. So the big joke we all have is like, it's like hosting Thanksgiving dinner at someone else's house with a bunch of people you've never met before, and you don't know who has food allergies and who is recently divorced. So you have to be a really quick study in TV directing. You have to really be able to understand and work with the dynamics that have already been established, both from a personnel perspective and creatively, to invent inside of it and make your episode yours, right? In a feature, you have the burden of kind of all the decisions, which is great because it's your creative vision entirely. On the other hand, you have all the responsibilities all the way to the finish line. And, challenges in different directions.
Oh, okay. I love the analogy about the Thanksgiving dinner. Mm-hmm. You can definitely tell that you're a writer. Thank you for that. It's clear as day. And not just any writer, a journalist, because a novelist, that would have been a page-long thing. A journalist is like 3 sentences. We're good? We're good. Move on. Okay, thank you for that. I now understand, and I know I will never, ever, ever, as long as I live, want to be a TV director. I never wanted to be a director, but now I know.
Well,
thank you, Laura.
Score 1 for motherhood, score -1 for directing.
Exactly. I feel like we're even now. Yep, we're at even 0. Next question, then. Let's get some more points on the board. Oh shoot, what was my next question?
I don't know.
Yeah, Jade is back.
Hi, Jade. Do I get to see Jade?
So I guess the next question would be, what skills did you already ask this? Did you take from journalism to become a director? And how can other people do that?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, let's be clear that I was not a hardcore journalist. I wrote magazine pieces. So I did reporting, but it wasn't like, I have friends who were full-on New York Times reporters. I never was that person. I cobbled together, it was like theater and film and writing for magazines and writing things, and all the kind of like a bunch of different stuff, waiting tables. I think that the skill set for directing, I mean, it's funny, I just mentioned waiting tables, but I honestly think so much of waiting tables was really useful to becoming a director, because you have to figure out, like, you have to be such a quick study when you're a waiter, right? Like cocktail waitress thing I did for a long time. I worked in a restaurant in New York, like high-end restaurant in New York for a long time. And you just have to figure out people so fast, which is what you have to do as a TV director too. And you have to figure out like how to speak to each person, you know, or like how to work that moment. That's a huge part of it. And then the other part is like stories are stories are stories are stories. So for me, whether I was working in documentary film or nonfiction writing or fiction writing or playwriting or writing for film and television or directing for film and television, like I believe every story kind of, you know, it wants to be told, it wants to be told in a specific way. And, you know, that's my job, as kind of the keeper of the story. You know, how does the story, what's important about the story? What's the tone and the texture and who needs what and what matters? And, you know, also like, what does it hope to say to those of us who watch it? You know, what does it hope to do for those of us who watch it? Because that's really what I think we're up to, is trying to, like, I don't want to be like grandiose, but like make the world a tiny bit better by doing what we do, just a little tiny, just even for that night. You know what I mean? Just like, even because my mom's going to watch Rookie Feds in a couple of weeks and she's going to watch my episode, and I want her night to be great. You know, I want her night to be great. I want that moment to be great. And I want to have done something with those wonderful actors and that great writing to like elevate all of us just a tiny bit, you know?
I love that.
Yep.
Okay, see, look at that. There's that philosophy. So I just want y'all to notice it was not my fault.
It was not your fault. That's true.
I was led there. No, I'm
Right there.
I was led to
I take it.
intelligence. Yes, you lead people to intelligence, and that is a good quality in being a director. That's a great quality. You make us think for a moment. Unfortunately, I am now sponsoring, and time is up, and time has been up. But that's not important. I've had so much fun. So I have to ask the last question. I'm gonna add something to it so we can talk a bit more. So first part is what's coming up next for you? And then of course, secondly is where can we find your works or follow you on social media?
Okay, great. Second one first, Tessa Blake director.com. If you just do a search for my name, that'll come up. That's my website. And then social media, I think all the little links are on that website. You can find me. I'm kind of bad at social media now. I just got tired of it, but I love seeing you people on it. Anyway, coming up next. Well, the literal next, I have a Rookie Feds episode that's airing in a couple of weeks, which is a great new show. Love it so much. I have a Quantum Leap episode airing, great new reboot show, and that's airing in a couple of weeks. And then I go back to work on 911 Lone Star with Rob Lowe, which is a fun show. So I've got a few of those coming up. This year, it looks like I'm getting to direct a feature that I love, a beautiful feature that I love. And if you go to my website, I'll keep people posted about it as we do it. And then big fingers crossed for my own series, which, you know, I hope we're shooting next fall. So
wait, is this a series that I'm excited?
That's exciting information to know.
I finally get some cool air and a motorcycle comes right past.
That's how it goes. You can't be cool, you have to swelter.
I was like, you see how the glow was going?
You're glistening. It's good.
Look, motorcycle. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited about the series. I hope you get it.
Thank you.
Before we go, I do have to say this one thing. I hope you've enjoyed this interview. And then my narcissist self would like to know, can I please come to the series if you get it and eat some craft services?
We don't want to meet anybody now.
No, I mean no one. It is my 12. I read about craft services when I was 12 years old, and I decided right then and there it was going on my bucket list. I have finished everything on my bucket list but craft services.
Well, then I'm going to have to wait, because you can't get done with your bucket list too early, I feel like. I mean, craft services, if it's the last thing, you got to wait at least another decade. If you add some more things to your bucket list, you can come anywhere I am and have some craft services, because it is great. Crafty is great. It's huge. It's so fun. The snacks are so fun and cute. COVID kind of screwed it up. It used to be really, really fun, but crew morale That's what's happening at craft services. A cup of tea, a chocolate, nice people.
Okay,
Good
so we'll add something else onto your bucket list. We can go when she gets
exactly. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Mhm.
I think I figured it out now. I want to date a model and an Australian. There we go. 2 new things. We're good.
Oh,
We're good.
Excellent. All right, crafty right away. Got it. I got you. I got you now.
All right.
So
So
much for
remember,
joining us.
everyone, that you can go to tessablake.com,
Director.
tessablake.com, and find out more about her. To find out more about us, you can go to www.andithoughladies.com, and you can go down to the middle of the page, and you can see the charities that we proudly support. We like to ask that you try to take some time out and support them as well. We thank you in advance for that. Remember that wisdom is all around you if you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona and the
And
not
Dave.
missing. There you go.
Oh yeah, thanks for listening.